You can drop your body fat down to single digits, but that doesn't guarantee your abs will actually show up. For years, the standard advice has been to rely on planks and leg raises, but those movements do almost nothing for abdominal thickness. Planks are purely for core stabilization, and keeping your back perfectly flat during leg raises simply shifts the heavy lifting to your hip flexors. Instead of cycling through hundreds of random exercises, we are going to focus entirely on two specific, biomechanically sound movements that force the abdominal wall to grow. To execute this setup, you only need a clear spot on the floor, a standard flat bench, and either an ab mat or a tightly rolled up towel. By shifting your training from basic core stabilization to targeted muscle hypertrophy, you build individual abdominal blocks that are actually thick enough to push outward against the skin. Before we touch the exercises, we have to fix the mechanics. The primary anatomical function of your abdominal muscles is to bring your rib cage and your pelvis together. They do this by actively rounding your spine. This is where most people get trapped. If you lock your spine perfectly straight and swing your legs up into an L shape, your abs contract just to stabilize your torso. Your hip flexors end up doing the actual work. This diagram shows the mechanical difference. On the left, the rigid L shape primarily works the hip flexors. To isolate the abdominal wall, look at the right side. You have to force your body into a C shape through active spinal rounding. Notice the physical distance closing between the bottom of the ribs and the top of the pelvis here. If you execute a repetition with a completely straight, unbending back, you are failing the movement. Generating true abdominal mass relies entirely on that spinal flexion. Any movement that forces you to maintain a flat, rigid spine offers practically zero hypertrophic benefit for your abs. Step 1 is hitting the lower abdominals. The mechanical rule here is simple. The bottom half of your body must travel upward toward a completely stationary top half. We start with a beginner reverse crunch. Lie flat on your back, bend your knees, and pull them toward your chest. The goal is to lift your tailbone clean off the resting surface. Do this through strict muscular contraction alone, without letting your legs swing to generate momentum. As your strength increases, you progress by gradually straightening your legs out higher and higher. This extends your physical leverage, which simulates adding heavier weight to the movement. Look at this setup. By placing an ab mat directly under the lower back, we create an immediate elongation of the lower abdominal wall before the rep even begins. Recent research into regional hypertrophy indicates that muscles often grow most effectively when they are loaded in their most lengthened state. By using the ab mat to curve the spine backward, you force the lower abs to generate force from this stretched position, which triggers a more significant growth response compared to a standard flat back repetition. Mastering this lower section means learning to execute a strict, momentum-free elevation of your pelvis. That bottom-up contraction is the only way to force growth in that area. Next, we address the upper abdominals. The mechanical rule flips. Now, your upper body must actively fold downward, while the lower body stays completely still. A beginner crunch with the ab mat accomplishes this. Position the mat beneath your mid-back, stretch backward, and fold your chest downward. There is a strict failure point to watch for. If your torso lifts any higher than your shoulder blades, the tension immediately leaves your upper abs and shifts straight into your hip flexors. Once standard crunches become too easy, you progress to the rope cable crunch. This schematic highlights the exact form required. The most common mistake on this machine is swinging your hips backward toward your heels to let your body weight pull the cable. Instead, lock your arms beside your ears and freeze your hips at a strict 90-degree angle. Holding the hips completely static forces your spine to curl downward strictly against the resistance of the weight stack. To increase the difficulty further, turn completely around. Facing away from the cable significantly maximizes the resistance placed on your abs during that initial stretched position. Effective upper abdominal training demands strict discipline. If you completely immobilize your hips, your core has no choice but to handle the entire load. Executing these mechanics correctly is only half the process. To generate physical changes, you have to plug them into a structured hypertrophy program. Your baseline target is 3 sets per exercise, working within a range of 6 to 12 repetitions per set. This graphic outlines your path for progressive overload. Once you can easily complete 12 perfect repetitions across all 3 sets at the first tier, you must immediately advance the difficulty to the next tier. Your muscles also need time to repair. Beginners should perform this routine exactly 1 day per week, allowing those torn fibers enough time to physically rebuild thicker than before. Building thick, visible abdominal blocks means treating your core exactly like your chest or back. It requires a demanding rep range, continually heavier resistance, and scheduled rest. You now have a biomechanically sound 2-exercise protocol designed to shift the mechanical load away from the hips and directly onto the abdominal wall through consistent spinal flexion. But the biological reality remains. Even the densest, highly developed abdominal wall will sit completely hidden if covered by a thick layer of fat. To achieve a fully defined midsection, you must pair this physical hypertrophy routine with a calculated, science-backed nutritional deficit. While these exercises build the physical thickness of the abdominal wall, your body fat percentage ultimately dictates how much of that work is visible. The final look of your six-pack depends on a caloric deficit that allows those